At my work anniversary celebration, my supervisor shouted, "She's the example of what happens when hard work tries to cover up lack of talent." Everyone laughed politely as I faked a smile. Months later, an investigation launched after an anonymous tip, and he was escorted out of the building in front of everyone while I was promoted to his position. I've worked in logistics for almost 10 years now. Nothing flashy. Mostly freight planning, vendor schedules, and making sure trucks don't sit too long in the yard. I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Decent city. Cold winters. Good place to raise a kid if you can hold down a job and don't expect too much. I started at this logistics firm back in 2016 as a temp. I did invoice filing, order entry, and made a lot of coffee. I never complained. I wasn't trying to make waves, I just needed a steady job. My husband left around that time, and I had to keep the lights on and food on the table for my son. I didn't have a college degree. I had a GED, a 2-year business certificate, and a solid work ethic. Over time, they noticed me. I got hired full-time, then promoted. I stayed late, fixed other people's mistakes, covered shifts without asking for anything. I didn't kiss up. I just worked. Then, in 2022, things changed. The company brought in this guy named Marcus to streamline operations. He came from some firm in Chicago that specialized in cost-cutting and process optimization. He was the type that always spoke like he was on a podcast. Every sentence sounded rehearsed. He was tall, slick, always wore expensive cologne, and had this fake smile energy. People either sucked up to him or tried to stay invisible. I tried the latter. I thought if I just stayed quiet and did my job, he'd leave me alone. That was my mistake. He didn't like people like me. People who knew the system better than he did. He started small. He'd leave me off emails I should have been on. He'd assign me twice the work of others and say it was because he trusted me. But the real kick came at my 8-year work anniversary. It was January. Snow on the ground. I remember because I had to dig my car out that morning, and I was still 5 minutes early to work. Around lunchtime, my team threw a little party for me in the break room. Some cake, some soda, a banner someone reused from last year's retirement party. It was simple, but I appreciated it. Then Marcus walked in. He didn't even look like he knew what the celebration was for. He just grabbed a coffee, looked around at everyone smiling, and then said, "Oh right, the celebration." He clapped his hands once. Everyone quieted down. He said, "Let's take a moment to recognize Jennifer. 8 years with the company. That's commitment. That's endurance. So far, so good." Then he added, "She's the example of what happens when hard work tries to cover up lack of talent." People laughed. That fake, stiff kind of laugh. Some of them looked at the floor. A few glanced at me like they didn't know what to do. I smiled. Or, at least I tried to. My face was burning. I held a paper plate with half-eaten cake and just stood there like a statue. Someone said, "Jesus, Marcus," under their breath. But no one actually stood up for me. He just kept talking, joking about grit and survival instincts, like I was some pet project. Then he walked out like nothing happened. I sat down and pretended I was fine. But I wasn't. That night, I drove home in silence. My son asked how the celebration went. I said fine and went straight to my room. I didn't even eat dinner. I sat on the edge of my bed and just stared at the wall. I wasn't just humiliated. I felt erased. 8 years of grinding, of staying late, of keeping that place running, and that was the thanks I got? I didn't sleep much that night. But I did something else. I made a folder on my computer and called it insurance. I didn't go into work the next day with some master plan. I didn't suddenly turn into some spy. I just started paying attention. For the first time, I stopped giving Marcus the benefit of the doubt. I stopped excusing the way he talked over people or how he forgot to invite women to planning meetings. And then I noticed something else. Vendor invoices didn't line up. We were paying way more to certain third-party carriers than we used to, even when volume was lower. I double-checked shipment logs, timelines, and who approved what. Marcus's name kept showing up. He was fast-tracking payments, approving exceptions. using two different vendor accounts that were registered under the same corporate address, but different names. That's when I realized this wasn't just bad management. It was fraud. I started printing things. Email chains, payment records, audit trail screenshots. I made backups. I took notes. I compared phone logs with approval times. Sometimes I stayed late after everyone left and used the scanner in the mailroom. I kept it quiet, told no one, not even my best friend at work, not even my son. After about 4 months of digging, I had a stack of proof. Then I sent everything, anonymously, to the corporate ethics hotline. Not just some vague complaint. I laid it out like a damn court case. I included exact figures, screenshots, vendor names, even his travel records. I wrote a timeline that explained how the money was moving and how long it had been going on. I signed it, a concerned employee. Then I waited. Nothing happened for a few weeks. Then the interviews started. It started with little things. First, HR sent out a company-wide email about reaffirming our commitment to compliance and ethical operations. No one thought much of it. Just another memo. Then, the head of HR, who rarely came down to our floor, started walking around more. She wasn't talking to people, just observing, watching. A week later, several of us got calendar invites for routine interviews. They were worded vaguely. Mine just said, internal process review. I played dumb. When I sat down for mine, it was with 2 people from corporate. 1 woman from legal, 1 man from internal audit. They asked questions like, have you ever noticed discrepancies in vendor payments? And how would you describe your supervisor's handling of third-party contracts? I kept my tone neutral. I gave honest, basic answers, but nothing that pointed back to me as the tipster. They nodded a lot and took notes. After that, things got quiet. But the energy changed. Marcus looked nervous. He wasn't strutting around as much. He stayed in his office longer. One day, I heard him arguing with someone on the phone, his voice low and sharp, like he was trying not to be overheard. Then something strange happened. One of the newer girls in purchasing, Sasha, was called into HR and never came back. She wasn't fired. She just disappeared. Her desk was cleared the next day. No explanation. I found out later she was Marcus's girlfriend. They'd been hiding it for months. She'd been approving some of those shady vendor invoices too. After that, it escalated fast. 2 weeks later, 2 men in suits showed up unannounced. They walked straight past reception and up to Marcus's office. The whole floor went quiet. About 10 minutes later, we saw them again, this time with Marcus between them. He wasn't cuffed or anything, but his face was pale. He wasn't talking. He didn't even make eye contact with anyone. They walked him past everyone. Through the same break room where he humiliated me. Past the same table where I stood with my slice of cake. He didn't say a word. They took his badge and walked him out the front door. That was it. Just gone. Later that afternoon, we got a message from senior leadership. Effective immediately, Marcus is no longer employed by the company. We are conducting a full review of all vendor contracts. We remain committed to upholding the highest ethical standards. No one dared ask questions out loud. But in private, people were whispering like it was the damn Watergate scandal. Some of the same people who laughed at his joke about me were suddenly acting like they'd hated him all along. I didn't say a word. I just kept working. A few weeks later, I got called into a meeting with Lisa, the regional director. I thought maybe they found out I sent the tip. But instead, she offered me a promotion. To Marcus's job. Director of Logistics and Operations. I almost didn't know what to say. She said the team needed steady leadership from someone who knew the business and had earned the trust of the department. I said yes. Not because I needed the title, but because I'd earned it the hard way, and I wanted the power to protect people like me from ever going through what I did. But it wasn't all celebration. A week after I got the job, I found a note in my mailbox. No name. Just one sentence, printed in big, block letters. You think you're clean? At first, I thought the note was just someone being bitter. I figured it was one of Marcus's old buddies. Maybe someone upset I got the job. I tossed the note in my drawer and didn't mention it to anyone. But a few days later, I started noticing things. First, an email I never sent showed up in my sent folder. It was blank, just an empty draft addressed to a vendor we hadn't worked with in over a year. I thought maybe I'd clicked something by accident. Then a print job I never ordered came through the office printer, an old invoice from a freight company Marcus used. My name was on the approval line, but I never touched that invoice. I double-checked the company logs. Someone had used my login after hours. I called IT quietly and asked them to do a security review on my account. They found 2 login attempts from an off-site IP. Same credentials, 2 different nights. Whoever it was had access to our systems, and they were using my name to poke around. I froze. Was someone trying to pin something on me? The next day, I found another note in my inbox. This one wasn't printed. It was handwritten, scribbled with a pen in shaky cursive. You weren't the only one watching. No signature. I showed it to Lisa, the regional director. She took it seriously. Said she'd escalate to corporate security. They ran an internal scan and found a USB had been plugged into my terminal the previous week, after hours. That's when I realized it wasn't just some bitter employee. Someone was trying to drag me into Marcus's mess. Or worse, make it look like I was part of it all along. That night, I sat in my car outside the office long after dark, trying to make sense of it. Then I remembered something. 6 months earlier, back when Marcus was still here, I'd found a weird file buried deep in our shared server. It was named Project Redshift. I assumed it was just some stupid name for one of his vendor schemes. I never opened it. But now, I went back and pulled the audit logs on that file. It had been accessed 2 days ago. From my account, I opened it. Inside was a list of names. Over 50 of them. Employees. Contractors. A few outside consultants. And next to each name, dollar amounts. Dates. Notes like approve under alias, delay audit, and use alternate path. My name wasn't on the list, but I recognized half the people on it. And 5 of them still worked here. I printed it out. Every page. I locked it in my desk drawer and scanned it into my personal drive at home. Someone was covering up the rest of Marcus's mess. Someone who thought I'd stop once he got walked out. But I wasn't done. Not even close. I didn't sleep much after finding that file. I kept thinking about all those names, some I liked, some I didn't, but all tied up in whatever Marcus had started. And now someone was trying to pin parts of it on me. I couldn't let it slide. I'd stayed quiet too long the first time. Not again. I went back through the list and started connecting the dots. 2 names stood out right away. Eddie in accounts payable and Trina in vendor management. Both had weird gaps in their records. Eddie's logs were spotless, too spotless. Like they'd been wiped. Trina had signed off on 3 payments to a fake carrier called Blue Forge Logistics over the past year. That company wasn't in our approved system, but somehow they'd been paid, under my department. When I confronted Trina directly in the break room, she just stared at me and said, "I'd be careful, if I were you." I didn't back down. I took everything I had and sent it straight to the top, our corporate legal team in Chicago. Not the ethics line. Not HR. I wanted this on record, with no middlemen. 2 days later, they flew out a forensic audit team. It all came crashing down fast. Eddie got walked out first. Then Trina. Then 2 others from Marcus's old crew who'd been routing money through fake vendor shells. One of them broke down and admitted everything. Said Marcus promised them kickbacks if they helped hide extra fees in vendor payouts. Said they thought it would stop once he left, but then I got the job and they panicked. Thought I'd dig too deep. They were right. But here's the part that still stings. When the dust settled, corporate did one final review and found a mistake. One of the payments from last year, one I'd approved without checking closely, went to a shell company linked to Marcus. I'd missed it. I hadn't known, but my initials were on it. So even though I wasn't involved, even though I exposed everything, they wrote me up. Negligence and oversight. It went in my file. And then came the kicker. I was told I could keep the title, but the board wouldn't approve a salary increase for the first year. Due to the circumstances. I almost walked out right there. But I didn't. because even with that hit, I was still in that chair. I still took down a network of frauds. I still cleared my name. And I made sure one last thing happened before I let it go. Remember that break room where Marcus humiliated me? I scheduled a full remodel. New tables, new counters, fresh paint. And on the first day it reopened, I stood at the front and gave a short speech to the department. I didn't say much. Just this: we work too hard to be stepped on. So from now on, no one gets to talk down to people who keep this place running. Not ever again. Then I tossed out the leftover supermarket cake. Got real food for everyone instead. So yeah, maybe I didn't come out clean. I made mistakes. Trusted the wrong people. Missed a few things I should have caught. But I stayed standing. And Marcus? His name's still under investigation. Rumor is he's trying to cut a deal to avoid charges. No one's laughing now.